an important lesson I'm learning with myself and my art and what I produce is just staying true to myself, and everything comes natural after that. I don't try to paint to sell. If I worry about that, um, my work lacks the spirit. um, and I think that uh, collectors can see that. um, but anytime I've worked on something where I've just been passionate about and spent months working on it and just having a blast because it completes something in me. um, I've never had trouble selling it. So um, if you like it, if you're passionate about it, someone out there will feel the same way. So.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold brush. My name is Laura Orengo-Bayer, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. On today's episode, we sat down with Nick Eisele, a classically trained oil painter who focuses on intimate still life paintings, often incorporating skulls and metallic objects. He tells us about his studies at the Schuler School of Fine Art in Baltimore and his love of manipulating lighting and backgrounds in his work. He talks about how studying animation in college and his interest in cinema influenced his observation of forms and use of lighting techniques in his paintings. We also talk about Nick's artistic journey, as well as some tips on how one can improve at their craft. He also reminds us of the importance of slowing down and getting to know how your brain works, as well as maintaining authenticity to your artistic voice, mental well-being, and finding sustainable ways to supplement income through a side job or other jobs related to your art. He also suggests entering juried competitions and using social media platforms as a way of gaining exposure for your work. Finally, Nick tells us about some possible pop-up workshops in Texas this coming July. Welcome, Nick, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's great that we somehow accidentally ran into each other in the least expected place, which is Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, we're doing this via Zoom because you are in a different town than I am. But still, we're in the same time zone and in the same country.
Within reach.
Yes, yeah. And of course, it was awesome meeting you in person too. And I'm so glad we reconnected so I can get you on the podcast because I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a year, as you already know. And now our listeners know because I think our listeners should definitely check your work out because you have gorgeous, like intimate little still lifes. The way that you paint them is just like it's magic. Like whenever I watch your videos on Instagram, magic. Um, but we can dive into that later when we're talking about that. So before we do you mind telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Nick. Nice to meet everybody. I am a classically trained oil painter. I got my education, like my atelier education at the Schuler School of Fine Art in Baltimore, Maryland. Before that, I was in like an animation track at Texas A&M University, and that's kind of what got me interested in oil painting. Um, and it's kind of the reason I joined the animation program was because they offered drawing and painting classes. I just wanted a way to weasel in that like creative aspect into my life, and then it kind of took a hold, and I just wanted to keep pursuing it. Um, so my work usually tends to focus on still life. Um, I kind of gravitate towards that because I love kind of absolute control with my subjects, and with still life, I can really get intimate with them, and um, kind of shift them around, change the lighting, kind of treat it like a stage, for like a movie or something. Just how can I enhance the effects? How can I bring life uh, to these mundane everyday objects? So that's kind of a quick synopsis of my work.
Yeah, and it's a great one too because I definitely see in your work how you like to play around with background colors, for example, or you like to recreate the background in a way that gives more drama or more interest to the objects in front. And also the objects that you pick, like skulls and like really nice shiny copper objects. Or I really like the one you did of a jaguar. It's like a Mexican jaguar head. I
Oh
really
yeah,
love that one.
I have that right here for
Oh, I
those watching the
love it.
video.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I'm always. I mean, you nailed it. I love skulls and then metallic objects. I really gravitate to those. So kind of like besides painting, like one of my favorite pastimes is just going antiquing and um, going to consignment shops and just browsing at everything and just once I see something that catches my eye, I know I need to paint it and I will buy it at whatever cost and then hopefully recuperate the investment with a great painting. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And since you mentioned too animation, I wanted to ask you, was there anything from when you studied animation that kind of, influenced your work as well? Because I know that animation, and also because you mentioned movies, does have that, sort of more cinematic approach or more of I guess, a more dynamic approach than just regular like atelier painting. Do you find that it influenced you in that way?
yeah, I think definitely it's one of those things I didn't realize until uh, way in the future. Um, so I graduated maybe 10 years ago, pretty close. Um, and during the time studying animation, I kind of always had like a chip on my shoulder because I just wanted to do art and none of the technical stuff. But as I dove more into still life painting, I kind of realized how much studying animation kind of influenced how I observe these items or stuff and animating, you're practically playing God. You're building something out of nothing and you really have to analyze every aspect of the object, the lighting, the materials, how the light is passing through the object with subsurface scattering, uh, the ambient occlusion, the way the form is, the different planes, kind of modeling in a 3D program really helps you think of planes and it's kind of the same as sculpture and how um, everything blends into each other. Uh,
Mhm.
I think that's why, ateliers, even if you're in a oil painting track, you still have to sculpt because uh, just learning about the form helps you paint. And yeah, so I don't know how much animation has influenced my paintings visually. Um, of course, I'm very influenced by the film industry and cinematography and kind of the graphic uh, light and shadow kind of side of imagery that really plays a role into my paintings.
Mm. Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
very
not quite sure if
compositional.
I answered your question, but
Yeah, yeah,
a,
I
a
think
lot
you
of
did.
a lot of little pieces add up, and
Mm.
uh, it's not necessarily one thing that's affected me, but a bunch of little different things. I'm
Yeah,
definitely very very grateful for my studies.
yes. Yeah, and it makes sense. It's a little bit like how you mentioned earlier. It's a bit of like you're influenced, but maybe you're not exactly sure how to pinpoint it. Um, but I do see the cinematic influence. When I look at your work, it does seem very much like a scene instead of, oh, just an object, which it's a big difference. Like when it's just an object, oh, here's an object in its place. It's one thing, but when it's an object within its environment, that's another thing, right? It creates more atmosphere, which I think your work definitely has that atmosphere, um, which is cool.
Yeah, I think
Um,
atmosphere is definitely a challenge I try to uh, conquer each painting because the background's the hardest part of the painting for me. Like every single painting, because it takes up the most space, And two, it can't be dull. Like it has to complement the items. The items have to feel like they're in the space and the atmosphere. And um, it's quite difficult. And I pull a lot of influence from like David LaFell and David Chaffetz in terms of the background, because I feel like they do a great job at creating space and atmosphere. And one of the big kind of like aha moments for me, or once I started enjoying still life, is once I started thinking of still life not so literally. I mean, I still do it more than I would like, but I try not to paint an object inside a shadow box with a cloth, like sitting on a cloth. Like I want separation from the foreground and the background. I think that creates a better painting and it doesn't look so contrived.
Yeah, and it gives it depth, which is also very important to that atmospheric sort of look. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, and then I wanted to go back to your childhood. Not kidding. Um, but I do want to go back to, when was that moment that you decided, okay, I want to pursue a career as an artist? When was that?
Um, so, classic answer, always been drawing and interested in art since I was a kid. Drawing Dragon Ball Z characters is just very fun, and also I kind of liked the element of kind of like impressing my friends or classmates. Is a sense of pride, but I did kind of lose that, towards high school, and um, kind of when I first went to college, I started studying engineering, mechanical engineering, kind of because that is kind of what my family just did by default. So I just kind of thought, that's your responsibility. Uh, but I quickly learned my freshman year that I hated it. I was not passionate about it, and because I was failing in school, I um, kind of protected myself by drawing again, and just started doodling in class in my free time, kind of as a way to avoid studying or my responsibilities. But I just kind of fell in love with it again, and I was like, maybe I can do something with this. And I started looking at different art forums online, and just kept coming across concept artists, and they were just amazing artists, and it was all digital and fantasy, and I love that genre. So I was kind of like, hey, like I want to do this. I'm gonna drop out and go to different school and figure out how to become a concept artist. And as I was kind of debating that, um, I happened to come across like a little known department at Texas A&M that was the animation visualization department, and I had never heard of it. And it's not, Texas A&M is not the school you'd expect to have animation or even kind of an art department, which it wasn't even like fully fleshed out at the time yet. Um, so I saw that they had a digital painting class. They offered one digital painting class, and it's kind of like an elective. But I was like, I just want to join this program just to take this digital painting class. And so I applied and got in, and kind of, the rest is history. Uh, I kind of curated my experience in that department to be more hands-on and art related. And, uh,
Mhm.
and then I guess the biggest was my oil painting teacher and life drawing teacher, Police House, and also another mentor there, Sam Woodfin. But they were artists at heart, and they were uh, huge influences on me, and kind of introduced me to the modern art world, of realism, the different artists, and um, kind of put me down that rabbit hole. So as soon as I graduated, I just kind of went up to an atelier and just I still had the dream of becoming a concept artist, and I knew I was not good enough because it's extremely competitive, and I knew I had to get better. And so I decided to go to an atelier for, maybe a year or something just to get a little bit more technical skill and build a portfolio so I could apply to a design school. But I think I quickly um, kind of picked up oil painting and especially still life.
Mhm.
Uh, so it was just a rush of like, you know, um, quickly, like a exponentially improving. And I couldn't stop. And then you start selling a few of your studies, and then you're like, well, maybe I can just stick with this and hopefully make it work. So
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool though, because like I can definitely see some of that influence of the concept art. Um, especially,
yeah,
like the choice of colors and how you give life to your still life objects. It feels very much conceptual, but also, I mean, concept art is a lot more grand, I think. But you definitely pull some of that grandeur into your work, which is really nice. And the other thing that to continue, this this whole journey because the journey obviously still continues. How has it been like for you to, you got to the atelier, and then how has it been like for you to seek out your personal voice as an artist?
that's a good question. I'm not quite sure how to answer because I still feel like I am still seeking out my voice, and I'm not sure like that feeling will ever go away. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think while you're studying, you're constantly looking at other artists, and mimicking them in a healthy way, I would say. Um, and that kind of slowly builds your voice by taking little inspirations from each artist. I can still see like who influences me in my work, and I kind of cringe about it because I'm like, I need to separate myself a little more, and hopefully I will over time. But yeah, I'd say definitely. Um, I was in Baltimore, kind of affiliated with the school for close to 8 years. Again, I only thought I was going to go there for 1 year or something, and then I ended up staying there for 8 years. And I think one of the reasons me and my partner wanted to move away is just because we wanted to separate ourselves from that school environment. Even though they're our best friends, they're our family. Um, we just felt a little constrained to their artistic habits and um, aesthetics. I think we just wanted to find our own voice from that point on.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like, you're finally leaving the nest, right? The nest where like
Yeah,
you grew, and then you're like, okay, I think I'm a little too big for this nest now, and I gotta fly away
e-
and do something else. Yeah,
exactly. That's
I totally get
perfect.
that. And yeah, and then staying there, I agree. It can be good because it's the people you know, and it's where basically you developed at the very beginning. But at the same time, yeah, I do agree. It can be a crutch to stay behind there because it prevents you from exploring other things. One, in my opinion, maybe this isn't true for your situation, but in my opinion, you can feel a little bit like, I want to explore this, but they're going to judge me. because I'll
Yeah,
be breaking away
exactly.
from the academic. Yeah. So it can feel a little bit like you can't express yourself fully and you can't grow anymore, at least not in the
Yes.
direction you want to, because you feel like everyone's watching you and everyone's like judging, which can be really
Yeah,
tough.
it's really hard to experiment because, especially because I would work at the studio a lot. They're ex I love the Schulers to death. They extremely nice and welcoming to me, and they, even after I graduated, would allow me to come in and paint in the studio. But yeah, it's definitely hard to experiment or do something risky because someone will come behind you and be like, "What the hell are you doing?" And you're just like, trust the process or
Mhm.
just bear with me. It could fail, and it's hard to fail when people are watching you. So
Yeah. Yeah, especially when, in these academies, we're taught such a useful formula, right? We're taught this formula of like getting from point A to point B and you know how to get there. But when you're experimenting, you have point A to point like F, right? Which you don't even know how to get there. You kind of have these tools from the formula, but they don't necessarily always work for the thing you want to accomplish, right? Like it can get a little bit complicated because it requires a lot more thinking, a lot more trying to figure stuff out on your own, that the formula from point A to point B can't necessarily give you. So I get that because then it does look messy, right? When you're experimenting, it will probably fail, and that's good because that means you tried something new. But in the academies, drawing failing is almost like, oh my God, what happened to you? Like, you know,
right.
it almost feels like they're slighted by it. It's like, how dare you? Um, but yeah, I totally get that. But speaking of, improving and stuff, what is a tip you would give to someone who's looking to improve at their craft?
That's a good question. I feel like I have a different answer for that every time I get asked that. Um, I think, I mean, the hardest part and the most valuable part is to constantly reevaluate where you are. Um, I think, it's a healthy balance, but being self-critical, like looking at either like your upperclassmen peers or other artists on Instagram and comparing your work to them, like why is theirs so successful and mine is not? Like, how can I improve it that way? Um, but be careful not to be too hard on yourself because slow improvements is good. It's just, do a painting, be proud of it, and naturally, you'll probably do this intuitively, but a week later, look back at that painting and be like, okay, how can I improve this? Uh, and then also like another thing is just slowing down. I think is a big improvement. I know coming from me, that's quite deceiving because all I do is post time lapses on Instagram, and it looks like I'm painting super fast, but really I'm painting pretty slow, I'd say, especially in the drawing stage. If I spend, like, if let's say the whole painting takes 3 hours to finish, like an ala prima, if I spend 2 of those hours just mapping out the drawing and shadow shapes, like, I am okay with that because that is the most important part is just the foundation and the bones of the painting. Um, if you block in those shadow shapes and you can like it already feels like a finished painting, like it's just you're just like I know this is gonna be good. Like that's I think a good feeling to have.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's worth it to be proud of your work. Because you mentioned that, like allow yourself to be proud of how far you've come. And then once you're down from that high a little bit, you can, think clearly and consider like, okay, compared to my peers, like how can I improve this? I love that. And then also I really like that you mentioned that drawing is fundamental. Because I completely agree. Almost every episode of the podcast, I do mention that as well, that if you want a good painting, You need a really, really good drawing because it doesn't matter
Yeah,
if you have like really good rendering, you can't out render a bad drawing. It'll be bad.
yeah. And
Yeah.
like again, I guess on that note, like every artist works differently. So I think
Mhm.
also another tip is to find the way that works for you. So for me, I'm very meticulous, so I keep everything clean. I keep my palette clean. I don't let paint gunk up and get gross mounds of crusty. I don't know, but you know the artist I'm talking about. But
Mhm.
anyways, and then when it comes to the drawing stage and the blocking stage, again, I'm very meticulous and precise. But there are the artists that are more abstract and they, kind of like a Richard Schmid kind of style. And if that works, if that's how your brain works, chase that. Um, so maybe my advice of slowing down isn't the best, but still be conscious of each decision for your brushstroke. Don't go so much on autopilot, especially in the beginning stages. Um,
Yes.
really concentrate while you're painting, um, and then halfway through the painting, that's when you can start getting into the mindless flow, the autopilot.
Mhm. Yeah. I actually completely agree with you about the slowdown. Especially because, even in music, right? Even in music, if you're learning like a really difficult part of a song, say on violin where you have to move your fingers in a specific spot in a particular way while you're, moving the bow, you have to slow down to be able to get that combination correct, right? So I feel like it's very similar in painting, where in the hard parts, it's very important to slow down, to really observe. And like you said, to really be present and intentional about what you're looking at. So I totally, totally agree. Slowing down is very good for learning. Um,
Yeah,
and it's really sad too that I think today, because of social media, we see, people who seemingly work fast, kind of like how you're saying about your videos, or people who are posting stuff and it feels like, oh my God, they made this masterpiece in like a day, but really it probably took them like 3 months. Um, so there's
yeah,
almost this erroneous perception about the speed of the production of work. Uh, I mean, yeah, some people paint really fast, and that's great for them. But other people don't, and especially if you're just starting out, like, not beating yourself up is so important. Like, just like I love how you said about figure out how your brain works. Because everyone has a different, like, I guess, operating system, right? Where like the brain just decides, this is my
right,
speed, this is how I perceive things, and this is how I express things, right? And then just like putting all of those together into a painting. And that's the hard part, right? That's that exploration side, that we were talking about. That of course the academic gives you all of those tools to be able to handle that, but then you have to open yourself back up, to learn these things about your brain. So that's a great point.
right. And also like the way, I mean, also like I never, I always enjoyed looking at art books and um, material like that, but I never learned that much from it.
Mhm.
Um, like speaking of Richard Schmidt again, like his book Alla Prima, I tried reading it and I didn't get anything from it. But that's just the way I'm just not a that type of learner. But if I see someone painting in person, I
Mm.
can mimic them like no other, and that's the best way I learn. Uh, So again, it's just finding yourself.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. And I love that you mentioned that too, because that's like your learning style, right? Definitely you prefer learning from observation, from seeing someone else do it. And yeah, it's good to mention that too, because like I remember when I read the David Leffel book that one of his students
Yeah.
published. I remember every time I would read that book, my paintings would improve.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I feel like we're a little bit opposite in that way. Even though I do like watching someone paint, um, I like figuring stuff out too on my own. I don't know, it could just be that I'm stubborn. It's like, no, don't give me the answer.
No,
I want
yeah,
to
for
figure it
sure.
out.
I think sometimes even if someone gives you the answer, you're just not uh, in the position to understand that answer. But then you'll be painting, and then you'll have that aha moment, and you're like, oh, like that's what they mean, or um, you know, which brings me to a point because I think I find it weird looking back now that um, usually any type of art lesson they'll always have beginners doing master copies.
Mhm.
And as far as the beginner's concerned, they're just trying to make a one-to-one copy. And the teacher's always like, oh, you got to learn from the masters, the way they do their brush strokes and stuff. And um, but I feel like the only thing a new student is learning is how to just copy a one-to-one image, basically.
Mhm.
But I started doing master copies again later in my career, and I feel like I learned way more than I ever have with them because I can now understand the temperatures, the brush strokes, the edges, the materials they used. Um,
Yeah.
so part of my thinking is maybe it's not the best thing for a student. Maybe I'll regret saying that later on, but at this moment, um, you know, yeah, I kind of forget my original point, but
Yeah.
um,
No,
right,
but I
like
agree.
you're
I
not
agree.
ready to learn those things because what's the point of thinking about brushstrokes if you don't even know the planes or the form or how light works, um,
Yeah. Yeah, I
stuff like that.
completely
So
agree. I mean, I understand why they're useful to beginners. In the sense of like,
yeah,
okay, you're like copying, but at the
they're
same
not
time, it's a little
hurtful.
bit
Yeah,
mindless. Yeah, they're a little bit mindless. They're not really paying attention to the things that they should be focusing on because they don't know
yeah,
what they don't know, right? It's like a little bit of that. Okay, I'll do
right.
this, but I'm not sure what benefits I get from it. So I get that. I totally get that. And definitely reflecting on it with more understanding and doing those copies with more understanding is definitely more beneficial. I totally agree. Um,
And
yeah,
also,
I
like I
think.
guess having an intention with the master
Mhm.
copy, are you just focused on how the artist does, temperature shifts or brush strokes or edges, like kind of picking one of those things and trying to mimic it the best you can.
Yeah, and also, picking specific painters that you love, right? Like people that you like. If I could paint like someone, who would I paint, right? Who would I paint like? And try to pick like two or three, and then like go from there. Yeah, I totally agree. Um, and then I wanted to touch on a topic that I think a lot of artists face, no matter what stage of their career they're in, and that is imposter syndrome. Uh, do you have any advice for someone who might be trying to overcome imposter syndrome?
Um, well, I will say it's one of those things that will never go away, as far as I'm concerned. Uh, I think just realizing it's imposter syndrome is the best thing you can do, and kind of again, I think like the saying, like "fake it till you make it." Kind of like that. Like, do I necessarily believe I'm a valuable guest on this podcast? No, not really, but I'm going to do it anyways because someone thinks I am, and we'll see where it goes. But I think confidence and again mental health in the artist lifestyle is a very big um, concern, and something to be conscious of. So I mean, you know, there's a week where I'm feel like I'm painting great and I feel on top of the world, and then the next week I feel useless, can't concentrate, can't my mind and my brush are not working together, and I'm like, oh crap, like where was the paintings last week just a fluke, like just an accident? So it's a constant battle back and forth, but just know that it um, it's the ups and downs will come and go, and just to bear with it,
Mm,
and make sure you're valuing yourself, and not um, I mentioned when you're comparing yourself to your peers or other artists, it's a healthy balance. Like, one, it can help you improve and seek where you're going, but two, if you do it too much, it can be soul crushing. Uh,
it's soul crushing. Yes.
yeah, and just remember again, like social media is an illusion, because maybe it looks like they're super productive, but they, I guarantee, have the same battles you are, and uh, this painting that looked like it took a day might have taken weeks or months. So I mean, even like for those watching the video, like this painting behind me, I've been working on it for months, like 6 to 8 months. Not nonstop, but I'm kind of like, it's such a tiny painting, but no one's gonna know that once I post it on Instagram.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
just
And it looks great.
yeah,
So
it's getting there, but yeah. So imposter syndrome, just analyze like where you come to. I think looking back at your like pictures you've taken of like artwork uh, is very important, because you're like, well, actually in the past year I have improved a lot, or I have actually completed and been more productive than I thought. Because in the moment it might feel like you haven't uh, completed a task in months, but then
yeah.
you know going back in your photo timeline, you might convince yourself otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely zooming out of the work that you're doing now, because like it's so easy to get lost in your goals, right? And thinking like I have to reach this goal, I have to reach this goal, and then you forget that like I don't know, like Frodo, and you're almost at Mordor, right? And it's been forever. And you forget how long that journey has really been and all the things you've overcome. So I agree. It's good to look back and see how far you've come to help, with that imposter syndrome because it's so tough, to have that self-doubt just lingering all the time, especially when it gets to the point where you're trying to paint actively and you still have that voice of doubt just like right here whispering in your ear as you're like doing something. I think that's the hardest part as well. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And all of like my art heroes that I've met, like, I think you'll realize like they are still battling that as well. So,
absolutely.
you're never going to want to stop improving, which is a
Mm,
good sign. Um, and I think that's kind of what, creates this imposter syndrome, because you're never going to feel like where you want to be. Because once you progress, then you raise the bar. You
yeah, that's a great
never
point.
stop. But that's
Yeah.
also what makes the journey fun.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's having that movable goalpost. And it can be motivating or it can be demotivating. I guess it depends where you put that how far away you put that goalpost from you. Because if you put it too far, oof,
Yeah,
oof.
it just depends on the day too.
Yeah, yeah, and your mood and, like, "Can I handle this today?" And, like, "Can I believe that I can overcome?" Which is the other part. It's like, even if you know maybe you aren't the best, right? You can still trust that you can overcome those obstacles and, like, get there eventually. It just takes time and slowing down and patience. So, I hear that. I hear that. Um yeah, speaking of slowing down and speeding up on Instagram, I wanted to ask you also about a little bit more of the marketing side. And especially, I wanted to know what's been the most useful thing that you've learned in terms of marketing that has helped you get your work noticed or sold.
I think it's a very broad question, so
It is.
there's definitely a few avenues. So I think like what's helped me like in my career kind of sell my artwork the most or get my name out there, I'd recommend like number one is just entering like juried competitions.
Mm,
Whether they're like local or national or international. Uh, like OPA, Oil Painters of America, or NOAPS, National Oil and Acrylic Painters, um, International Guild of Realism. Like those are they host juried shows multiple times a year, and they're usually at like pretty prestigious galleries throughout the country. Uh, so if you're able to get accepted into them, they're really good opportunities because your name will be sent out on different platforms and medias through these organizations, and then also you'll get to display your work at these successful galleries that have incredible clientele and have built a name for themselves in the industry. And also, if they're nearby, you can go visit and deliver your work in person and kind of um, get some face to face value and hopefully make an impression. Kind of like that's like kind of a way to network. Um, and one you could win some decent prize money, which is always wonderful. And then two, you could sell your work through the show and gallery. The only downside is it's kind of an expensive investment because you usually have to pay a membership fee, a yearly membership fee to the organization, and then an entry fee to the competition. And then, you may or may not get accepted, which is always a gamble. And then if you do get accepted, you got to frame your artwork in a nice presentation and also ship your artwork and make sure it gets there safely. And
mhm,
so the price kind of adds up and you may not recuperate the costs. So it's a risk, but I think, it's kind of a necessary risk once you kind of feel like your work is at a solid stage. And so that's like one avenue. And then, of course, posting on social media. I can't claim to be like a mastermind at the algorithm or anything. I try to keep, my videos relaxing and simple, and they're just time lapses, so that way I can just record them and post them, and not have to worry about any fancy editing. And I'm thankful that they have performed, extremely well, and put me in a better position on social media. Um, and I hate to say it, but having having a prominent presence on social media has been like quite beneficial to my career. So I wish I could say it's not necessary because it's soul crushing to deal with, but you know, uh, companies or organizations, uh, feel like they're taking less of a risk on you if you have a presence. So it does kind of put your name more on the top of the list even. So um, yeah, I'm not sure if I answer the question, but maybe like a more specific question, I might be able to like
No, yeah, I think you
dial in a
definitely.
little more. But
Yeah, I mean, definitely, the networking and getting your work out there with, different painting societies and competitions. I completely agree. This really, really help. And then again, like Instagram, which I was just checking, you have 135,000 followers, which is
yeah, somehow,
insane. That's like the population of a small town, uh, a pretty good small town. So, that speaks volumes too of the quality of, I guess, in one side of work that you put out there, which is really good work, along with the entertainment aspect, which, people do follow Instagram pages to be entertained and to be inspired. And I think your page has both of those, which really, I think that's what everyone should be aiming for. Um, and on speaking of your videos too, I wanted to know, is there a specific type of video that people respond more to, or or is it like any of them
um,
basically?
I wish I try to do stuff that I think like, oh, people are gonna love this, and then
Mhm.
it'll, so to speak, like flop compared to my other videos, and then
Mm.
videos I've been like ashamed to post that I've kind of like kept in my camera roll for months, and then finally just be like, who cares? Like I'll just post it. Like those
Mhm.
have performed really well, so it's just, I don't know. You never know, and I do like, in terms of like the type of content I post, I try to keep it um, very original and kind of to my tone. I'm not
Mm, mm, mm,
um, I don't really inject my personality into my videos. I just want something kind of relaxing and um, visually pleasing for someone to watch if they stumble across my videos. And also, the reason I like doing the time lapses is it kind of exposes my process from start to finish. Um, I'm not just like putting on that final highlight and then zooming out and showing the painting. Um, I kind of want to just just be um, just reveal kind of what it took to get to the end, and you can kind of see my mistakes, and of course it happens all very quickly. And I've been kind of experimenting with trying to figure out maybe different ways to show my painting process in a relaxing way, to maybe get more like real time kind of footage. Um, and then
mm,
also I kind of try to avoid staying away from trends. I kind of and I'm sorry for anybody who does this, and I understand like I understand like the why you're doing it because it does work. It does catch people's attention. It does get you views. But personally, like when I'm browsing through Instagram or Reels or even TikTok, like if I see someone slowly turning around but holding their painting, like I'm gonna immediately skip. I'm so tired of seeing that, and it's like I don't like to be baited. I don't want to
Mhm.
watch 10 seconds of your video just to see the end of painting. And I am curious what the painting looks like. So
Mhm.
it psychologically works, but also, I think the trends quickly get overdone and they annoy me um very much. I just want to see I want to see people's original voices. That's like
Mm.
if I follow someone, it's because of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I find myself like I'm very I have a great following on Instagram, but when I'm just watching videos or browsing social media, um, for my own personal entertainment, I find myself gravitating more to TikTok because I find that the content there is much more personal and informative, um, which I find quite refreshing. Which is ironic with all the controversies and stuff. But besides that, and TikTok, I can learn more about other industries. So I kind of talked about how I enjoy still life because I can kind of like treat it like a stage or um, like so I'm very interested in following like cinematographers and
Mm.
like gaffers and lighting experts because they talk about these equipment I would have never considered or stumbled upon. Um, so it's kind of like one entertaining because I like to see the passion in a different industry, kind of in the same way I feel passionate about art, and then two, I get to like learn something new.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I'm also kind of gravitating towards TikTok just because you can have longer format videos. I feel like with Instagram, it really like constrains you to only like I think it's 1 minute tops for like videos or 2 minutes or something. Whereas
Yeah,
on TikTok, it's like 5 minutes or even like 10 minutes, which is a lot longer to be able to have a discourse rather than just like a gimmick, right? Which is like, I feel that way too about the people turning around with the canvases sometimes. After a while, you see so many of them, you're like, okay, this is a gimmick. Like, I'm not falling for this.
yeah.
Even though now
Like
you
the
can
first one
like,
you see, you're like, that's clever, but then
yeah, but then everyone's doing it, and you're like, okay, it doesn't feel authentic anymore. Like how you're saying, you want to see that person's voice and that person's, way of doing things rather than them just, doing what everyone else is doing, which makes a big difference. Also because those gimmicks, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but in my opinion, I feel like they don't necessarily produce followers. Or if they do produce followers, they don't necessarily produce buyers, right? You just get like looky-loos instead of like legit buyers who are interested in your work. They're more like, oh, look, another artist who did that gimmick, haha, you know?
yeah. And I don't even know if like finding like if your goal of Instagram or TikTok is to find buyers, like that might be the wrong approach because I don't know. I mean, the art world, like fine art, is very expensive. I can't afford paintings. I wish I could. I feel like most people who browse Instagram, they're not. The chances of finding a buyer is going to be extremely slim.
Mhm.
I'd say even for some of the higher end artists. But there is a way, of course, to monetize, with teaching. Like everybody, wants to learn. That's an easy aspect to market, and then prints, I guess, could be good. But I think I think personally, my goal with Instagram is just to get my name more out there, and you know, yeah, I don't know, but like I'm not expecting anybody to message me and be like, I'm going to buy this painting, uh,
No,
especially
unless
if it's
yeah.
quite it's a used car priced painting. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Or it's a scammer being like, "I'll buy your work as NFTs." It's like, "No, you're
yeah,
not."
so many scam messages, like
Oh,
um,
yes. Yeah, or people
but
being like, "Oh, can you promote this brand of gothic clothing?" It's like, no. I get so many of those too. Um, yeah,
yeah, but also
mhm.
Instagram's a good way to get people to get on your newsletter or something, like
Yes.
to filter. One, you get your name out there, but then you can filter out those people into maybe more serious
Mhm, mhm.
followers who could, um, in a way, purchase a painting or sign up for a workshop, or buy a print.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, and that's the other important side, which is, having that website link on your Instagram. So if someone is a serious buyer or someone is seriously interested in, discovering more and maybe you have a blog or maybe they do want to sign up for your newsletter, it's really important to have that link on there. Because like you said, it's the serious people who will do that, not so much the looky-loos. Um, but that also makes me wonder, have you been able to sell through Instagram, or has it mostly just been, like, because of your networking?
Um, maybe, I mean, maybe a couple, like especially um, like the videos I post on Instagram, they're just alla primas,
Mhm.
and I like that because I have kind of my, I guess I call it like portfolio work, which I'll spend months on, or just take my time, and then I'll have these alla primas. So I kind of have two different price ranges.
Oh.
The quick sketches, which I can sell, at a relatively lower cost. Um,
Mm,
so I have, had some success selling those to people who kind of just stumbled across me on Instagram.
nice.
So you never know. Like it's just like there'll be a week where I sell 3 or 4 paintings, and then there'll be a month where I don't sell any. Like it's hard to
Mm,
predict, but just
yeah.
doing what you can.
Yeah. But at least, by having your work there, you are increasing the chances that someone will see it and purchase it. So I guess that's the bright side of it. Because if you
Yeah,
weren't
absolutely.
posting anything, like, and you'd
Exactly. Yeah,
never sell anything.
there's really no downside to posting.
That's very true. That is very true. And I did also want to ask you if you have any tips or any like experience with, working directly with your collectors and maintaining those relationships with them.
Yeah. I mean, it's always different because each collector's different, and
Mhm.
some of my best patrons I've become, lifelong friends with. Like like I enjoy hanging out with them, and it kind of, I guess, my art kind of bridged our, well, when it connected us, and then just it's amazing how many, or the clients and patrons out there who are just hungry for a creative connection. And
Mm,
um, again, I find it very inspiring, and when I meet someone in a different field who is equally passionate towards that, like whether it's like a science or something, like it's just fun having a conversation that's not about art, which like you're hanging out with your art friends, it's always, it goes in circles about art. And um, you know but and that, I don't know, I mean, just whenever someone contacts me about my art, I just try to be myself, and be friendly and welcoming, and um, I don't know. It just happens. They either stick around and continue to support you, and
Mhm.
um, they get a fulfillment from it as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Huh.
I don't. I'm kind of rambling, but yeah, I don't. I mean, I have so many um, just wonderful patrons who I appreciate so much because I think they're what the art world needs because they value our creativity, and um, their support allows us to continue. So
Yeah. Yeah, and it is nice to talk to someone outside of the painting world who, like you said, appreciates it, um, and can like also inspire you. Because I feel like sometimes, you might talk to someone from a completely different like background, completely different career, and suddenly they'll say something and it'll, I don't know, click in your brain, and suddenly it makes sense for your paintings, right? You never really know. And if you stay only within like a certain circle, you might not get that perspective um, from some random point of view. Like for example, like evolutionary biology, for example. Like that's one direction where maybe you can come across like, oh, this is how human vision developed, and this is why we prefer certain things, which you wouldn't come across that if you were just within the painting world. Um,
right.
yeah, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But do you keep in contact with them? Do you just like do they message you? Do you like, like you said, like stay friends and like just talk about life and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I'm a pretty shy in character myself, but um, I still enjoy having conversations, and I keep my DMs open. I love talking about art, and I'm passionate about it, so it's easy to share kind of that side to me. And uh, I value meeting interesting people as well. So
Mhm.
um, it's not like a business tactic to maintain these friendships. It's just natural,
Yeah.
and I think that works out great. I think I think an important lesson I'm learning with myself and my art and what I produce is just staying true to myself, and everything comes natural after that. I don't try to paint to sell. If I worry about that, um, my work lacks the spirit. Um, and I think that uh, collectors can see that. Um, but anytime I've worked on something where I've just been passionate about and spent months working on it and just having a blast because it completes something in me, um, I've never had trouble selling it. So um, if you like it, if you're passionate about it, someone out there will feel the same way. So I,
Yes.
I definitely keep that in mind. And again, that's like kind of don't do this. Being an artist is extremely challenging. Like the stereotypes aren't out there for. I mean, they're out there for a reason. Being a barista or whatever, working at a coffee shop. Um, it really is a difficult um, track to build a career out of, and I'm still learning, and I'm nowhere near perfected it. And you really, the important thing is to keep yourself invested. Do it for yourself, and hopefully you'll be able to live off of it. But if you're um, sacrificing the part of you, the joy to please other people, I think you're going to get burned out so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love what you said about, you don't paint to sell. Because the first person that should be satisfied is you, and I agree with that. And then working backwards, right? Like in the sense of like, oh, if I'm painting to sell, um, first, like you said, you're gonna be sacrificing your authentic voice. And second, you're gonna be miserable because maybe you won't sell that. And then like I was telling a friend the other day, it's like if I'm gonna be miserable painting because I'm not painting what I want to paint, I might as well just get an office job because I'll be miserable there and at least the income will be steady. Not like with painting.
Right. Yeah.
So, so yeah, it's like if you picked this career, you picked it because you loved it. Um, and it's best to just continue down the path. If you do need to work, at a coffee shop part-time, great, because there you can even like focus on like, okay, I got my job and then that feeds me. Literally, I can eat and I can have a place to live and pay for that while I can focus without economic burden on what I love. Uh, so that's really good advice.
Yeah. And I definitely, I would say like, I try to be as like real and, uh, open as possible. And I would say, everybody's position is different.
Mhm,
And I think I considered myself like very privileged to be able to go on this course. You know, paying bills is very hard, but I know like if I actually hit rock bottom, I have family that would bail me out in a
mm,
second. So maybe that takes like the burden off of me. Like luckily I haven't had to, call on that card yet, but
mhm.
it psychologically it can, I don't know. I'm just trying to be real. Like I know every situation is different. So
Mhm, mhm. It is true, yeah, that having that support is really important. And knowing that even if you quote unquote fail, right, you still have a place to land on your feet. And again, that's why, having that side income coming in can be so valuable. Um, so yeah. And then I actually wanted to ask you, do you have any upcoming workshops or shows or anything you want to promote?
like in terms of teaching workshops, I have nothing like officially planned, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna be in Houston for the month of July, and I might try to like get a little pop-up workshop going. So if you're in that area, kind of keep an eye out. Follow me on Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter. Um, because definitely gonna do workshops more. I just got done with a workshop in Baltimore, which was an awesome success, and so definitely want to make more of them happen.
Mhm.
And then also, I am judging a juried competition through the art supply company Trikel. It is a pet portrait competition, and so if you love animals and love to paint, um, I encourage you to enter because the more there's to judge, and I just want to see everybody's creativity. So
Mm, nice. Yeah. Where
yeah.
where can people see more of your work then?
So the best place would be Instagram at Nick Eisele _art. That's like NICKEISELE. And then my website, www.nickeisele.com. Also, I have a TikTok. I'm not as, uh,
Active.
I don't post as much there just because I forget about it. And
Mm,
um, like I said, my videos don't do as well on TikTok because, again, TikToks I felt was more educational and
mhm.
um, less about music and
Interesting.
visuals, more about which there's the algorithm can send you different places. So
Mhm, mhm.
just
That's
realize
true.
that if you're only getting dancers or something, you might be in the wrong corner. But
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Nick, for coming onto the show and giving us all this valuable advice.
yeah, of course, I'm glad we finally were able to schedule it down, and it's
Yeah.
been a lot of fun. And I hope the viewers got some value out of this.
Oh, I'm sure they will. And I hope we can cross paths again, because I also love your
I'm
work.
sure we will.
So,
Yeah. I feel
yeah,
like
so
the realism world is a small bubble, so
it is. Yeah,
I
it's a
think we
little place,
all will eventually cross paths.
definitely. Well, thanks.
Absolutely.